What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Palantir stock, ticker symbol PLTR, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Wednesday, May 15th. All right, guys, Palantir stock today up 50 cents per share. That's plus 2.39% in regular trading hours. You know, it's about flat here after hours, but listen, wherever that may end up here tonight, we got about an hour of after hours left as of the recording of this video. Take it with a grain of salt. Volume is very low in the after hours. Stocks are easy to move. But listen, tomorrow we have a big day. Okay, tomorrow's a market-wide event, CPI. 1 hour before the market opens, so that's going to hit. So keep an eye out for CPI. I'm expecting volatility here. But listen, let's take a look at Palantir in particular. We will start by looking under the hood, pulling out whatever bias we can out of the volume profile. We will then look at the psychological levels that institutions, funds are looking at, so we need to be as well. We'll look at implied volatility, which is very important if you are trading options on this stock. We'll then look at the expected move for tomorrow and finish out with the directional bias coming out of the chain today. All right, now let's start here on the 5-minute chart with that analysis of the bias, if there is any, in the volume profile. Hey, if you are new here, by the way, Palantir is a daily upload. I cover this stock every single day. I've been a fan since IPO. And if this is a stock you're interested in for the long haul, I think you may find a home here. So I appreciate you subscribing to the channel, and I'll keep the videos coming daily. So let's peel back that onion. Let's take a look under the hood and see what we have. Okay, so a normal contextual higher volume opening bar, volume quickly fades. Okay, now I want you guys to understand, again, if you are newer here, I remain completely unbiased when we're looking at these things. Okay. So what we see here is we see volume dump off. That's very normal. We then see that upside move that we saw early this morning, and it made that move on out of context bullish volume, right? We don't really expect that level of volume at that time of day. It usually tanks off. It's usually more down in this region at that time of day. Yet we're seeing consecutively higher volume, which is out of context for that time of day, to the green side, supporting that move to the upside. As the stock starts to pull back, then up here, volume tanks off. That's some pretty clear bullish bias there this morning. As we move through, listen, this is all over the place. Okay, these little green pops, you could assign a small amount of bullish bias, but it's very irregular, okay, at best. As we move through the day here, on the backside of this fade, this is less powerful than the bias that we saw on that up move, because it's just barely out of context, okay? But it's pretty heavy to the red side, a lot of consecutive red bars, and it is slightly higher than what you normally expect this time of day, which is evident when you look at, you know, the just after that move. So that's a small amount of bearish bias there midday, and then a very normal close. This big red bar here, it's a rebalancing bar, which is very typical on Palantir. I tend to ignore that one unless there's some kind of news event driving it. Usually it's just rebalancing, which means very little. Now let's move on here. Let's take a look at those psychological levels. We will start on the very simple 30-minute chart. And today was a pretty interesting day. So you guys remember yesterday's video, we talked about how we had just reclaimed that 50 period. That was really good to see. Now this morning we tested it in pre-market. Very low volume in pre-market. Take that as well with a grain of salt. Though we did see a bounce off of that level in pre-market. Okay, we then ripped off the open, attempted to claim the 200 period. We were unable to do so. We faded back below on that slight amount of bearish bias in that volume profile we just looked at, and then consolidated below the 200 period here on the 30-minute into the close tomorrow. Well, first of all, you can see we're now reclaiming it in the after hours. That is due to the 200 period coming downside rather than the stock moving upside. I will take that with a grain of salt. But tomorrow, bulls, a few things I'm looking at here. The idea really is to get above both of these and hold the 50 period as support, because when you're above both and moving upside, the 50 period will cross over the 200 and become the closer level. So the idea is to have the stock, the 50 period just below, and then the 200 period just below that. So in order to get back into position, you're on the 30-minute, you would ideally want to see any downside test of either of these be respected as support, but ideally get that 50 period back above the 200 period to get one step closer of getting in that position. Whereas bears, you know, if we look here, we're 1/3% away from that 200 period, and we're about 1.4% away from testing that 50 period. Ideally, bears, if you can get back beneath, you're actually pretty close to being in your position because, back here on the 10th, which was last Friday, you were already kind of in position, which is that what we just explained flipped, mirrored to the bearish side. Okay, so getting back beneath both of these levels, treating the 50 period as resistance, so ripping downside on high volume, retesting on low volume, and rejecting off the 50 on high volume to confirm that as resistance is what you bears want to see. Bulls, that's what we wouldn't want to see. Now, let's move on here to the 4-hour chart and take a look. You can see here rejecting off the 50 period. So if we're looking here, we're currently about 2.5%, guys, away from that 50 period on the 4-hour bulls. The idea is to reclaim at least that 50 period. If we can claim that as support, that would set us bulls up for a near-term test potentially of that 200 period, which we're of course going to want to get above as well, putting us above both. Bears, if we go upside and test the 50 period on the 4-hour, you just want to see a repeat of today, ideally an even harder rejection on as much volume as possible. Because currently you bears are kind of in position here on the 4-hour. All you need now is some downside movement in the stock to start dragging those moving averages lower and get descending areas of resistance. Bulls, to avoid that happening, ideally we want to give it back above at least one, if not both of these here on the 4-hour as soon as we can. Now, let's move on here to the daily, guys. The daily is the most important chart of all, and you can see here on the daily, we're 7.3% away from that 50-day moving average and 11% to the downside away from the 200 period moving average, or the 200-day moving average. So what's the more immediate look here on the daily, right? Like, what has the most eyeballs? Well, listen, guys, it's 21 and 22. Each whole dollar on a stock that's priced in the $20 range, like Palantir currently is, each whole dollar is a psychological level. So listen, this is really simple. Bears, any test of 22, reject. The goal is to get back below 21 and treat 21 as a resistance and continue or start to stair-step downside, right? Bulls, any downside test of 21, you want to hold it on high volume support. And the goal is to get back above 22 and start treating 22 as a support level to help us now stair-step upside, that next level being the 50-day around 23. Now, specifically for you options traders, still important if you're trading shares, but in particular you options traders out there, IV, up a little bit in the last couple of days, but still very low compared to the last 3 months or so. Okay, so the Vega value that you're paying for up front when you buy new contracts right now is quite low, comparatively speaking. And so that's not a bad thing, right? For those of you looking to sell options to farm out some premium, perhaps you're not really getting the most amount that you could in terms of premium because IV is so low currently. Now, let's do expected move here. The next expiration we have on Palantir is, of course, going to be Friday the 17th. The expected move by Friday's close compared to today's close is plus or minus 85 cents per share. To get tomorrow, we can divide that by 3 and then add back 50%. That gives us an expected move. And the reason we do that, by the way, is because just dividing by 3 assumes a green streak or a red streak into the end of the week, and we don't want to assume that. Once we add back 50%, that gives us a plus or minus expected move out of Palantir tomorrow of plus or minus 42 cents a share approximately. Okay, 42 to 43 cents. That's approximately the market's expectation in terms of volatility here by tomorrow's close compared to today's close. But listen, understand, there's no directional bias baked in. That's on purpose. That's the volatility expectation, which is like a huge piece of the puzzle, right? If you don't know the volatility expectation and you're just trading options based on a directional bias, well, then you might as well be trading stock, right? With options, with the leverage that options provide, it requires more experience or more knowledge to really trade them effectively. You're adding in factors that you can't ignore. It's not just, okay, well, I just get all this, free leverage because I'm simply taking on an expiration date. Okay, if you understand that, you're already kind of halfway there. A lot of people don't even understand why it's so cheap, quote unquote, to get the leverage. The reason it is because you're taking on multiple factors, one of which is a time frame, an expiration. But volatility is another one of those factors. Vega is one of the Greeks, right? That can't be ignored. All right, well, that's the expected move. Again, plus or minus 42 to 43 cents by tomorrow's close compared to today's close. But what about the directional bias? Well, we just did a full analysis, okay? But we can also look at volume. All right, over 500,000 contracts traded today, 393,000 calls, 118,000 puts. Heavy bullish bias on the overall ratio here today on Palantir. We can go one step further, break that down by time frame, the 0 to 20 delta range, the short-term speculators. 143,000 calls, 33,000 puts. Heavy call side bias out of the short-term speculators here today as well. Listen, hey, if your goal is to try to expedite the process of going either part-time, maybe just side hustle, or even full-time as a trader, that is the original reason why I built out our private community over 3 years ago. I'm, of course, in there every day, sending out my personal scalp setup alerts, in-play stock alerts. Those actually make up the majority of my personal trading volume, at least active trading volume. Sending out human-verified unusual options activity, and working with my Platinum one-on-one group. Of course, there's 4 membership tiers. You can take a look at that link in the pinned comment. I'll see you inside. I appreciate you leaving a like on the video, and I'll see you in the next one.